The biometric relay came online at the 22nd hour of the observation cycle. For the first 4 minutes, I assumed the calibration was wrong. I pulled the instrument log, ran a manual offset check, Preeth to cycle the sensor array from his station while I watched the numbers. They didn't change. Preeth, I see it. Run it again. He did. The relay returned the same values. Muscular atonia index, 0.02. Threat index response, sensory input processing, pressed across all registered channels. Cortical activity pattern, deep cycle, non-alert, non-rotating. Complete neurological blackout. Pulled up the subject file. Human male, 31 entered a years, residential unit 4, Crestfall 7, enrolled in the Vatheri Continuance Biological Survey's voluntary cohabitation study. Occupation, structural engineer. Known medical history. None flagged. He had signed the consent form, eaten a meal at the 21st hour, and then, without apparent concern for the active sensor environment, or the 17 registered environmental stimuli, we had logged in his residential unit in preceding 6 hours. A ventilation fluctuation, a neighbor's door, a pressure differential in the corridor outside. He had lain down on his sleeping platform and gone completely offline. I had 214 species on record. I had never seen this Sora. That was Verith at the 3rd station, not looking up from her archive terminal. The comparison poll just finished, and nothing matches. Not within 30% of these values. I stood up and crossed to her screen. She had queued the atonia indices for every species in the survey's sleep cycle catalog, all 214, sorted by depth of neurological suppression during rest. The human's bar extended past the scale margin. I looked at the next closest, a deep-water filter feeder from the Sorith shelf, a creature with no natural predators in its entire evolutionary record, suppression index of 0.61. The human was at 002. Send a flag to the review panel, I said. Don't characterize it yet, just flag it and ask them to patch in. The panel came online 11 minutes later. 4 senior analysts from the Vatheri Continuance Biological Institute, remote feed, faces in the upper left quadrant of my display. Senior analyst Previth Soankas spoke first. We see your relay values. Confirm the instrument is functioning. Confirmed. Triple checked in the last 8 minutes. The subject is currently in this state? Yes. 1 minutes now. A pause on the panel feed. Someone off-screen said something I didn't catch. Sora. Previth's voice was careful. What is the subject's environment reading? I pulled the ambient log, active, ventilation cycling at irregular intervals. Neighbor unit on the other side of the partition wall logged 2 auditory events in the last 20 minutes. A door, a dropped object. Corridor pressure fluctuation at 38 minutes. All within normal residential parameters. And the subject's threat index response to those events. I looked at the relay. 0, I said, across all of them. No response. Partial arousal. No monitoring cycle initiated. He processed none of it. The panel went quiet for a moment that lasted longer than it should have. In the survey, every species we had cataloged, everyone, slept in some form of partial alert architecture. Vatheri themselves maintained a rotating vigilance cycle. One hemisphere resting while the other monitored at reduced capacity. The Sorith used a 3-phase system, full rest only in the deepest phase, automatically interrupted by any registered threat stimulus above a minimal threshold. Even the filter feeder, the most neurologically suppressed species in the catalog, maintained passive pressure sensitivity during rest. A reflex so basic it barely counted as awareness, but it was there. The human had none of it. No rotating cycle. No partial monitoring, no passive reflex. He had simply stopped. Gone somewhere his instruments could not reach. Left his body lying on the platform in a state of complete muscular collapse, in a room full of active stimuli, and trusted that the world would still be there when he came back. For 6 to 8 hours, every night. How long has this been documented in the species record? Previth asked. Verith was already pulling the archive. As far back as the survey's earliest human biological files. Pre-contact, the sleep cycle documentation is marked as baseline physiology. She scrolled. No evolutionary period on record where the species showed lighter sleep architecture. This appears to be original. Original, Veth repeated, as if testing the word. At 39 minutes past blackout onset, the corridor outside the subject's unit registered a pressure event. A maintenance system cycling, brief mechanical pulse that ran through the wall with enough amplitude to register on 3 of our external sensors. Every Vathari on the observation post woke up. The human did not move. I watched his atonia index. It did not flicker. His cortical activity did not shift phase. His threat index response remained at 00. His body processed the event the same way it had processed every other stimulus in the last 39 minutes. It didn't. Sora said quietly from his station. I know, that pulse was, I know. We had a name for the amplitude threshold at which a stimulus reliably interrupted rest in surveyed species. We called it the arousal floor. Every species in the catalog had one. Some were high, some were low, but every species had a level of environmental input that would pull it back toward monitoring. I was beginning to think the human did not have one. Or rather, I was beginning to think it had one, and that the floor was simply somewhere we hadn't reached yet. Previth spoke again at the 50-minute mark. I want to ask a different question. Go ahead. Not about the architecture itself. A pause. About what produced, and I waited. 214 species in the survey, Previth said. Every one of them, everyone, maintained some degree of vigilance during rest because the evolutionary record required it, because something, at some point in their history, was hunting them while they slept. The vigilance architecture is the record of that pressure. You can read the predator from the sleep cycle. Yes, I said. This species has no vigilance architecture. Another pause longer, which means one of two things. Either there was never any pressure, which the fossil record contradicts. Their planet's evolutionary history is extremely competitive, or the pressure existed and was resolved. Completely. Some point in this species' history, every threat that hunted them while they slept was removed from the equation. I looked at the relay. The human's atonia index had not changed in 53 minutes. Removed how? Vareth said. It was not quite a question. No one answered. Said. I want the earliest fossil and behavioral archive pulled. Everything the survey has on human-predator interaction history. I want to know what was in that environment, and I want to know what happened to it. Vareth was already moving. I heard her pulling the deep archive files, the pre-contact biological survey data, the ecological stratification reports from Earth's surface assessment. I kept watching the relay. At the 58th minute, the subject shifted position. Not awakening, just a physical adjustment. Body repositioning on the sleeping platform without any corresponding rise in cortical activity. His threat index did not move. His sensory processing did not come back online. He was not checking, he was not scanning. He simply moved and went back under, as if the body itself had been informed long ago that movement during rest carried no cost. Vareth set a file on my station without a word. I looked at it. Early ecological stratification. Predator catalog, Earth surface, prehistorical period, apex predator density, estimated range, interaction frequency with human ancestral population. I read it for 2 minutes, then I closed it. Previth, I said. Yes. Read the early ecology file. And I looked at the relay one more time. The atonia index had not changed. The threat index response had not changed. The human had been completely offline for 61 minutes. He would remain that way. The survey's baseline documentation indicated for another 5 to 6 hours. Then he would wake up, make something to eat, and go to work. Whatever was in that environment, I said, is not there anymore. The panel was quiet. I'm recommending a new classification flag on the species file, I said. Not the sleep architecture itself. We have a category for suppression depth. I want a flag on the cause. On what the sleep architecture implies about the species' unrecorded history. I paused. Whatever they were up against, they didn't develop better vigilance. They didn't adapt lighter sleep. They solved the problem the other way. I filed the recommendation at the 63rd minute of the observation cycle. The human slept for another 4 hours and 40 minutes. When I signed off the session log, I wrote one line in the notes field, which I had not done in 214 previous species assessments. Query: what does it mean that they sleep this way now? I submitted it. I did not expect an answer. I did not think the archive had one.